The galaxy had always been quiet when it came to Earth. Humanity went about its lives, building cities, discovering science, exploring oceans, and slowly reaching for the stars. Most people never thought much about what lay beyond their skies. They looked up at the night and saw twinkling stars and the moon, and maybe, for a moment, imagined other worlds. But in truth, very few humans ever considered that those worlds were watching them back that far beyond the solar system. In a council chamber that stretched across a platform larger than any city on Earth, the Galactic Consual Senate was in session. The members of this council were beings of extraordinary intelligence, experience, and power. Their civilizations had existed for thousands, even millions of years. They had traveled through countless galaxies, mastered energy beyond human understanding, and monitored countless worlds. And yet, one small, blue planet had begun to catch their attention. Earth. The council had noticed something unusual. Humanity was different from the other species they had encountered. Humans were chaotic in ways that the council found both frustrating and fascinating. Their technology was advancing faster than the council expected. Their social structures, though messy, were resilient, and their willingness to challenge the unknown was unlike anything most other species had ever shown. A report had been compiled over decades, gathering intelligence from satellites, probes, and more subtle methods of observation. The findings were astonishing. Humans had built machines capable of leaving their planet, explored neighboring planets in their own solar system, and most concerning to the Council, had begun experimenting with ideas that could one day reach beyond the Milky Way. The Council's reaction was swift and unanimous. Humanity had to be controlled. They did not yet consider humans an immediate threat, but if left unchecked, they could become a problem. They did not want Earth to develop weapons or technologies that could challenge their authority. The solution seemed simple to the Council. Neutralize the planet before it grew too dangerous. Back on Earth, however, life carried on almost as if nothing was happening. People woke up, went to work, cooked meals, laughed with friends, and worried about bills, relationships, and weather forecasts. A few scientists noticed unusual readings in the sky's strange signals that seemed to come from outside the solar system. They shared their findings with colleagues, sparking curiosity and debate. Some thought it was natural phenomena, a quirk of physics yet to be understood. Others, braver or perhaps more paranoid, suspected it was evidence of intelligent life far beyond their world. Not most humans, however, didn't notice anything unusual. The news continued to cover politics, sports, and celebrity events. Schools continued to teach students about planets and stars, but nothing hinted at the fact that the galaxy's most powerful council had been silently watching, planning, and debating what to do with them. The council's first real decision was subtle but deliberate. They would issue a warning, a clear signal to humanity that their activities were being observed. The message would be encoded, layered with meaning and authority, designed to be impossible to ignore once properly understood. But there was a problem. The Council underestimated humans. They assumed that humanity would be scared, intimidated, or obedient. They expected panic, confusion, and submission. They assumed that humans, being a young and untested species, would tremble at the thought of cosmic power. But humans were not predictable in the ways the Council expected. The warning arrived quietly, hidden within patterns of energy that humans had only just begun to detect. Initially, it seemed like a glitch or interference. Scientists noticed strange signals affecting satellites and communication arrays. Teams worked day and night to decode them, trying to make sense of the strange symbols and patterns. Slowly, they realized it was a message of warning from an intelligence far beyond anything they had ever imagined. The message was clear in its intent, though cryptic in its presentation. The Council demanded that humanity halt certain activities, space exploration, advanced experiments, and anything that might give them power beyond their world. The threat was subtle but unmistakable. The Council made it clear that they had the ability to enforce their rules, and they expected obedience. When the message reached world leaders, the reaction was mixed. Some were skeptical, believing it was a hoax or misinterpretation. Others were concerned, realizing that humanity might have just drawn the attention of something far larger than they could comprehend. Debates erupted. Should humanity respond? Should they comply? Or should they continue their work, hoping that intelligence and ingenuity would be enough to survive any consequences? At the same time, everyday people noticed unusual things in the skies. Some reported strange lights, movements that didn't match known satellites or celestial bodies. Astronomers and amateur skywatchers shared images and observations online. The mystery grew, capturing the curiosity of millions. But still, life on Earth continued. People argued over politics, sports, and social issues, unaware that a decision about their future had already been made in a council far beyond their understanding. While the council prepared for potential action, human ingenuity quietly adapted. Engineers and scientists worked on systems to protect communication networks. Amateur enthusiasts experimented with ways to decode strange signals. Even ordinary people, driven by curiosity, began contributing to projects that, unknowingly, strengthened humanity's ability to detect and respond to the unknown. And in a way, humanity's lack of panic was their greatest strength. They were not paralyzed by fear, as the Council expected. They did not surrender to authority, nor did they blindly trust anyone who claimed to know the truth. Instead, humans reacted with curiosity, resilience, and creativity traits that would soon prove far more powerful than the Council had imagined. The Council's warning, intended to intimidate and control, had the opposite effect. It sparked innovation and determination. People began asking questions. Who is out there? What can we learn? How can we protect ourselves? Humanity, in its natural way, turned a threat into a challenge. By the end of this period, the stage was set. The Council had signaled their intentions. Humans, unaware of the full scope of the situation, had begun preparing in small but meaningful ways. The galaxy's most powerful beings believed they had the advantage. They believed humanity would falter under pressure. They believed that Earth could be neutralized quietly, efficiently, without major consequences. But the Council's assumptions were wrong. Humanity had a resilience and unpredictability that no one in the galaxy had anticipated. Their ability to adapt, to work together, and to face challenges with both determination and creativity would soon become clear. What the Council saw as a potential threat was, in fact, the beginning of a story they could neither control nor predict. And so, in quiet homes, bustling cities, and remote research stations, humanity moved forward. They continued to build, explore, and question. They continued to reach for the stars. Unseen, in chambers beyond the light years, the Council prepared to act, unaware that their first steps toward neutralization would be met with ingenuity, courage, and a kind of audacity that no Council member could have imagined. In that moment, the galaxy was watching Earth, but Earth, in its human way, was readying itself not with fear, but with curiosity, determination, and the unmistakable confidence of a species that had no intention of being silenced. The story was only beginning, and humanity's response would soon leave the galaxy speechless. The warning from the Galactic Consual Senate did not go unnoticed, but it was more mysterious than frightening at first. People on Earth received it in bits and pieces, strange signals disrupting satellites, bursts of unexplained radio waves, unusual patterns in data that no one could immediately explain. Scientists and engineers worked tirelessly, trying to understand the source. Some were fascinated, others were uneasy. Across the globe, teams gathered to decode what appeared to be a message from beyond the stars. It wasn't a message in words that humans could easily read. Instead, it was a sequence of pulses, waves, and energy patterns. It took weeks to even realize it was intentional communication. When the first researchers deciphered its meaning, the Council's warning became clear. Humanity was being told to stop certain activities immediately. Some projects, particularly those exploring space travel and advanced technologies, were specifically mentioned. The message implied that failure to comply would have consequences beyond anything Earth had ever faced. World leaders convened in emergency meetings. Discussions were tense. Many questioned whether the message was real or a sophisticated hoax. Others feared the worst. The mere possibility that humanity was being observed by beings more advanced than anyone could imagine sparked a mixture of awe, fear, and determination. Some leaders wanted to comply, to show humility and avoid conflict. Others argued that humanity should not bow to forces it did not yet understand. Meanwhile, scientists and engineers approached the situation differently. Their priority was knowledge. They were less concerned with obedience and more focused on understanding what had reached them. Universities, research centers, and private space organizations collaborated in ways that had never been seen before. Teams of experts studied the signals day and night, trying to unravel the meaning and intent behind every pulse and pattern. The warning also inspired ordinary people. Amateur astronomers, tech enthusiasts, and students became involved, scanning the skies and monitoring communications. People shared their observations online, debating and theorizing. The mystery united humanity in a rare global effort. For the first time in generations, there was a shared curiosity that transcended politics, geography, and personal differences. Humanity, without even realizing it, was beginning to prepare. Even as humans worked to understand the message, the Council watched. From their enormous chambers across light years of space, they monitored humanity's response. They expected fear, confusion, and hesitation. They expected humans to react with panic, perhaps even compliance. After all, no species of the galaxy had ever received a warning of this magnitude without trembling. But humanity was not predictable. Instead of panicking, humans reacted with cautious curiosity. The message became a challenge rather than a threat. People asked questions. How do they know about us? What are they trying to accomplish? Are they a threat? Could humanity survive if they attempted to enforce their warning? These questions sparked innovation. Engineers developed systems to monitor the skies and protect critical communications. Scientists ran simulations to predict possible Council actions. Even ordinary citizens contributed, offering ideas, sharing observations, and preparing in small ways that would collectively make a difference. The first significant breakthrough came when a team of researchers managed to translate the patterns into comprehensible information. They discovered that the Council had detailed knowledge about human technology, culture, and capabilities. The message was precise, almost surgical, in its demands. It was meant to intimidate, to make humans doubt their ability to continue developing and exploring. But it had the opposite effect. The very precision of the Council's communication gave humanity an advantage. It allowed scientists to understand exactly what the Council considered dangerous and what they were watching most closely. Humanity's response, measured and deliberate, was the opposite of fear. Instead of stopping, people doubled down. They worked to understand the universe more, to communicate with potential extraterrestrial life in ways that were safe yet assertive. They prepared defenses, not for aggression, but for protection. Communities began sharing knowledge more openly. The Council's warning inadvertently united humans in ways it could not have anticipated. Meanwhile, the Council grew frustrated. Reports from analysts indicated that humans were not panicking. They were not stopping their activities. They were, in fact, using the warning as a source of motivation. Discussions within the council became heated. Some members argued for stricter measures, suggesting that neutralization might be necessary sooner rather than later. Others cautioned against overreacting, noting that humanity's unpredictability made them dangerous, but also fascinating. As the debate continued among the stars, humans continued their daily lives, blending normal routines with extraordinary preparation. Children went to school, unaware that the future of their species was being discussed in councils light years away. Scientists ran experiments, engineers improved technologies, and ordinary people stayed curious, sharing ideas and learning. Humanity adapted to the situation naturally, not with fear, but focus, determination, and unity. One of the most important aspects of humanity's response was its collaborative nature. Unlike other species in the galaxy, humans were not isolated in small, tightly controlled groups. They shared knowledge across borders, ideologies, and languages. Even without fully realizing it, humanity's natural inclination to cooperate made them more resilient. This was a trait that the Council had underestimated completely. The Council sent another message, more direct this time. They demanded compliance, outlining specific activities that needed to cease immediately. They reminded humans of the consequences. But humans, now fully aware of the attention upon them, responded cautiously. They sent back information about their capabilities, highlighting the fact that they were prepared to protect themselves. Their response was careful, polite, yet firm. Humans did not threaten the Council, but they also did not show fear. The Council members were stunned. No species had ever responded this way. Their messages had been designed to intimidate, to force submission. Instead, humans had demonstrated understanding, intelligence, and resilience. The Council began to realize that Earthlings were unpredictable, not reckless, but unpredictable in ways that made them difficult to control. Even as the Council debated their next steps, humans continued to adapt. New technologies were developed for communication, defense, and exploration. Research into space propulsion, energy systems, and advanced computing accelerated. Governments, private organizations, and citizen scientists all contributed to the effort, working in parallel toward the same goal, understanding the unknown and protecting their world. The warning, which was meant to instill fear, became the spark for human ingenuity. The Council's assumption that a single species confined to one planet would respond with panic was proven wrong. Humans had not only interpreted the warning, they had learned from it, prepared for it, and used it as an opportunity to grow stronger. By the end of this phase, humanity had unknowingly laid the groundwork for a response that would leave the galaxy in shock. The Council's carefully planned warning, intended to neutralize potential danger, had instead inspired preparation, collaboration, and innovation on a scale that few could have imagined. Humanity had not bowed. Humanity had not panicked. Humanity had responded in the only way it knew, with curiosity, determination, and resilience. And so, Earth continued its orbit around the Sun, seemingly unchanged, while beyond the stars, the Council realized that their simple plan was no longer sufficient. They had underestimated the very essence of humanity, the ability to adapt, learn, and act together in ways that could defy expectation. Humanity had received a warning. They had acknowledged it. And unknowingly, they had begun writing the first chapter of a story that would soon leave the galaxy speechless. The message had been delivered. The warning had been sent. And Earth, in its quiet human way, had responded not with fear, but with preparation, curiosity, and the first hints of a courage that would soon shape the course of the galaxy itself. Despite the warnings and messages sent by the Galactic Consual Senate, Earth continued its quiet yet steady progress. Humanity had learned that they were being watched, and while that realization might have intimidated a less determined species, humans were curious, clever, and unafraid to adapt. Scientists, engineers, and everyday people had already begun preparing, each in their own way, for the possibility of an encounter with something far more advanced. But the Council was not a body to be ignored. From their vast chambers across the galaxy, the Council members debated their next step. They had warned humanity, and the humans had responded with caution rather than fear. That was not what the Council expected. They had assumed that a species confined to a single planet would panic, comply, or at the very least hesitate. Instead, humans had adapted, prepared, and even responded with quiet defiance. The Council decided action was necessary. They could no longer simply observe. A small-scale operation was planned to test to neutralize critical aspects of human technology without causing widespread destruction. The Council wanted to send a clear message. Compliance was expected, and Earth's audacity would not go unpunished. On Earth, life continued as normal for most people. Children went to school, workers commuted, and the usual rhythm of daily life carried on. Yet behind the scenes, humanity had grown quietly alert. Networks of satellites and communication systems were being fortified, often by teams of engineers and scientists who barely understood the full scope of the threat, but knew that preparation was wise. Governments, universities, and private organizations collaborated in ways that had rarely been seen before. The Council's strike began subtly. A series of disturbances appeared in Earth's communications and satellite networks. Satellites went offline temporarily, power grids experienced minor disruptions, and some scientific instruments showed anomalies. For humans observing these changes, the events seemed strange and unsettling, but no one immediately realized that they were under attack. Many scientists assumed these were glitches, natural phenomena, or technical failures. But as the disruptions continued, a pattern became clear. This was no random failure. It was deliberate. Humans began to mobilize their defenses, implementing redundancies, rerouting networks, and restoring communication systems faster than anyone could anticipate. Their resilience was remarkable. Every strike by the Council was met with innovation, improvisation, and repair. It became evident that Earth was not going to be easily neutralized. The Council, observing from afar, grew frustrated. Their plan had been simple: send a controlled, precise strike to demonstrate their power and enforce obedience. They expected fear, confusion, and compliance. Instead, they saw humans adapting, responding, and even learning from each attempt. Every minor disruption became an opportunity for humans to improve their systems, making them stronger and more resilient than before. Humanity's response was not just technical, it was also human in the truest sense. Engineers and scientists worked tirelessly, but ordinary people contributed as well. Communities shared information about disruptions, coordinated local responses, and helped maintain calm. Rather than succumbing to panic, people adapted and cooperated. In some ways, humanity's reaction was exactly what made them so difficult to predict. Their creativity and unity could not be controlled or anticipated by even the most advanced Council members. As the Council's attacks continued, humans began to observe and analyze the methods being used against them. They noticed patterns, timing, and signals in ways that the Council did not anticipate. Scientists pieced together the nature of the disruptions, identifying weaknesses and strengths in the approach. Engineers developed workarounds, sometimes anticipating the next move before it happened. Humanity's ingenuity was unfolding in real time, and the Council's confidence began to waver. One striking example occurred when a series of signals were sent to interfere with Earth's satellites. While the Council expected a pause in communication, human teams had already anticipated such an attempt. They had developed autonomous systems capable of rerouting data, restoring satellites quickly, and even masking certain activities from detection. In effect, the human response turned the Council's attack into a learning opportunity, strengthening Earth's resilience for the next encounter. What was most remarkable was how humans adapted without centralized direction. While governments and organizations coordinated, ordinary people also played a role. Amateurs, students, hobbyists, and volunteers contributed observations, ideas, and solutions. It was not a coordinated military effort. It was humanity itself, curious, clever, and determined, rising to the challenge. The Council had never faced a species that could respond so effectively to an unprecedented situation, especially without formal hierarchy or instructions. The Council realized that their first strike had failed to achieve the intended effect. Rather than instilling fear or forcing compliance, they had inadvertently taught humanity to adapt and improve. Each disruption, each interference, became a step in Earth's preparation. Humanity was learning faster than the Council could anticipate, and their systems were becoming more resilient with every attempt. Back on Earth, people began to notice strange phenomena in the skies and signals that seemed beyond human origin. Some interpreted it as a threat, others as an opportunity for discovery. The event sparked global curiosity. Researchers from different countries collaborated more closely than ever before. Technicians shared knowledge openly, even across traditional rivalries. What began as a response to disruption evolved into a global effort to understand the universe, and humanity's abilities grew in ways that the Council had not foreseen. In the Council chambers, panic began to ripple. Analysts reported that humans were not only resisting but adapting intelligently. Every measure intended to weaken Earth had only made it stronger. Strategists struggled to find the correct approach. Discussions turned to concern, then to astonishment. How could a single species, isolated to one planet, demonstrate such resilience and creativity against beings who had mastered galaxies? By the time the Council prepared for a second wave, humans had already adapted to the first. Systems had been hardened, redundancies built, and new measures implemented to detect and counter interference. Humanity's response was no longer reactive, it had become proactive. The planet itself seemed to pulse with a quiet, collective determination, a kind of instinctive coordination that could not be easily suppressed. Despite the Council's technological superiority, they could not account for the unpredictable nature of human ingenuity. Humans were not robots. They did not follow rigid patterns or assumptions. They improvised, adapted, and overcame in ways that were difficult to calculate. Each new challenge brought out creativity, problem-solving, and collaboration at a scale that the Council had never seen. The Council's frustration reached a peak when even small, precise strikes failed to disrupt the global flow of information or infrastructure. Humans had turned obstacles into advantages, glitches into lessons, and interference into preparation. What had been intended as a simple test of control became a demonstration of Earth's resilience, intelligence, and unity. And yet, for humans, life continued in parallel with these extraordinary events. Children still went to school, businesses still operated, and people still laughed, argued, and lived their daily lives. The average citizen was largely unaware of the full scale of what was happening beyond their skies. To them, the disruptions were technical challenges, mysteries to solve, or anomalies to report. Humanity's response, therefore, was not orchestrated by fear or strategy. It was instinctive, intelligent, and fundamentally human. By the end of this phase, the Council recognized a shocking truth. Earth could not be neutralized by conventional means. Their assumptions had been flawed. They had underestimated humanity's ability to adapt, innovate, and respond to unforeseen challenges. Every interference, every strike, every attempt to demonstrate control had only strengthened Earth's defenses and prepared humanity for the challenges that were still to come. For the first time in the Council's history, they realized that they were facing a species they could not easily predict, control, or suppress. Humanity's response was not based on brute force, fear, or power. It was based on resilience, curiosity, creativity, and unity. These qualities, so ordinary to humans themselves, were extraordinary to the beings of the Council. Earth had survived the first strike. Humanity had responded with intelligence, collaboration, and courage. The Council, observing from across the galaxy, began to comprehend the remarkable nature of the species they had underestimated. The simple attempt to neutralize humanity had failed, and in doing so, it had revealed the strength, unpredictability, and potential of a species that was far from ordinary. And so, the stage was set for what would come next. The Council would need to reconsider its approach. Humans, now aware of the attention upon them and strengthened by their response, were preparing quietly, instinctively, and remarkably for whatever might happen next. The story of Earth's resilience had begun, and the galaxy had yet to see the full measure of what humanity was capable of. Humanity had survived the first strike from the Galactic Consual Senate, and what followed was something entirely unexpected for both Earth and the Council. Instead of retreating, hiding, or panicking, humans began to act. Not recklessly, but intelligently. They began to organize a response, a countermove that was thoughtful, careful, and distinctly human in its nature. It started quietly, in labs, research centers, and control rooms around the world. Scientists who had once spent years focused on narrow fields suddenly found themselves collaborating on problems of enormous complexity. Engineers, mathematicians, communication specialists, and even amateur enthusiasts worked together, trying to understand the patterns in the Council's signals, their methods of interference, and the limits of their power. Unlike anything the Council expected, humans were learning in real time. Every strike, every disruption, became an opportunity to understand the galaxy beyond their world. That the first step of humanity's countermove was simple: observation. Instead of reacting immediately with force, humans studied the Council's actions carefully. They noted the timing of each interference, the specific systems targeted, and the patterns of energy that accompanied the attacks. From this data, they began to build models, predictions of how the Council might act next. Humans were not acting out of fear or anger. They were acting out of curiosity, intelligence, and self-preservation. Once these models were in place, humans began to respond in subtle, yet bold ways. Communication networks were fortified, redundancies built, and satellites shielded. Energy systems were rerouted, making disruptions less effective. Even attempts to intercept signals were met with countermeasures that humans had prepared in advance. The Council had expected panic, but what they saw instead was calm, precise action. Then came the first public acknowledgement of humanity's countermove. Scientists and engineers, having decoded part of the Council's signals, sent a response back. It was a message, carefully crafted, demonstrating both understanding and capability. Humans explained that they had detected the interference, understood its patterns, and had implemented measures to protect their planet. The message was polite, factual, and free of aggression, but it carried a clear undertone. Earth was not a species to be intimidated. When the Council received this message, there was confusion. The message was not defiant in the way they expected, nor was it submissive. It was something entirely different, confident, informed, and calm. Humanity had demonstrated that they were not passive recipients of orders. They were active participants in a conversation about their own survival. Some Council members were impressed. Others were uneasy. How could a single species, confined to one small planet, respond with such coordination and intelligence against beings who had mastered entire galaxies? While the Council debated, humanity continued to strengthen its defenses. New technologies were deployed to monitor unusual signals. Automated systems were designed to respond to disruptions in real time. Networks of satellites worked together in ways that humans had never needed before, sharing data and adjusting automatically. Even energy grids were restructured to minimize the impact of external interference. Humanity was learning not just to survive, but to thrive under pressure. The countermove also had a psychological element. Humans realized that one of their greatest strengths was unpredictability. Unlike other species in the galaxy, humans did not always follow strict patterns. They improvised, adapted, and innovated in ways that were difficult to predict. By maintaining a calm but proactive stance, humans made it clear that they were not intimidated, yet they were not reckless. The Council had underestimated the importance of human creativity and adaptability, and Earth was about to demonstrate it fully. One of the most remarkable aspects of this response was its collaborative nature. Unlike any other species the Council had observed, humans shared knowledge openly. Engineers, scientists, and even amateurs collaborated across borders and organizations. Local communities contributed by monitoring communications, reporting anomalies, and testing simple solutions. Humanity's response was decentralized, yet coordinated a living system of intelligence and action. The Council, watching from afar, began to realize that their assumptions had been deeply flawed. As humans prepared, they also sent a message that was subtle yet clear. It was not a threat, but it was a statement of understanding and capability. The message highlighted humanity's ability to detect and respond to interference, showing that they had not only survived the first strike, but had learned from it. It was a demonstration of intelligence, restraint, and confidence. Humans were saying, in effect, that they would not be silenced, intimidated, or controlled. The Council was stunned. No species had ever responded this way. Most would have panicked, retreated, or tried to negotiate for survival. Humans had done none of those things. They had observed, adapted, and communicated their capabilities in a way that was calm, deliberate, and unmistakably clever. Analysts in the Council chambers could not hide their astonishment. The species they had underestimated was showing resilience and intelligence at a level that few could comprehend. Meanwhile, back on Earth, life continued alongside this extraordinary preparation. Children went to school, workers commuted, and communities continued their daily routines. Yet underneath the surface, humanity had quietly transformed. Scientists, engineers, and volunteers worked in coordinated efforts, improving infrastructure, monitoring the skies, and preparing for whatever might come next. Humanity's response was not driven by fear, but by intelligence, creativity, and a collective determination to protect their world. The Council attempted to test humanity further. They introduced more complex disruptions, aiming to create confusion, miscommunication, and delay. But humans, having already anticipated some of these possibilities, adapted quickly. Redundancies ensured that no single disruption could cripple global systems. Automated defenses mitigated interference. Even unexpected challenges were met with improvisation. Humanity's adaptability and quick thinking made it nearly impossible for the Council to predict outcomes. In one remarkable instance, a series of communication interruptions targeted research satellites. The Council believed this would slow down humanity's understanding of space and technology. Instead, human engineers had already developed autonomous satellite networks, capable of rerouting data and restoring communication within minutes. What was intended as a demonstration of control became a showcase of human ingenuity. The Council had not only failed to weaken Earth, they had inadvertently strengthened it. The human countermove was not just about technology. It was also about strategy and perception. By responding calmly, intelligently, and proactively, humans communicated a simple truth. They were aware, capable, and resilient. They did not need to threaten, attack, or escalate. Their mere ability to respond effectively was enough to leave the Council questioning their assumptions. Humanity was unpredictable, intelligent, and united in ways that were entirely unexpected. As the days and weeks passed, the Council began to realize the gravity of the situation. Their initial plan to neutralize Earth had failed, and humanity's response had gone beyond simple survival. Humans had not only adapted, they had improved. Systems were more resilient, communication networks were stronger, and knowledge of the Council's actions had increased. Humanity had turned a warning and an attack into an opportunity for growth. By the end of this phase, it was clear that Earth's countermove had fundamentally changed the dynamic. The Council could no longer act with certainty. Their strikes and interference had failed to intimidate, control, or neutralize humanity. Instead, they had provoked a species that was clever, adaptable, and remarkably resilient. Humans had not only survived, they had demonstrated the very qualities that made them unpredictable and, in many ways, extraordinary. The Council was left with a choice: escalate further, risking unknown consequences, or reconsider their approach. For the first time, Earth was not merely a planet to observe or control. It had become a species to respect, understand, and perhaps even fear. Humanity's countermove had succeeded not through aggression, but through intelligence, unity, and the kind of calm creativity that could not be easily measured or predicted. And so, the story continued. Earth had responded. Humanity had taken action. The Council, watching from across the galaxy, was left speechless, not because Earth had fought back with weapons or force, but because humans had acted in the only way that truly mattered, with intelligence, preparation, and an unwavering determination to survive and thrive. The Council had expected to encounter a species they could manage, a species they could neutralize with precision and authority. They had anticipated fear, hesitation, and compliance. Instead, humanity had responded with intelligence, preparation, and an adaptability that none of the Council's analyses had predicted. What began as a test to assert dominance had become a revelation of the extraordinary resilience and ingenuity of an entire planet. Reports streamed into the Council chambers. Analysts, diplomats, and strategists presented their findings with urgency. Every strike the Council had attempted had been met with rapid adaptation, clever countermeasures, and even proactive learning. Humanity had not just survived, they had grown stronger. Their global networks, satellite systems, and communication channels were now more resilient than ever. Every attempt to intimidate had instead highlighted humanity's creativity, unity, and resourcefulness. The Council convened an emergency session. Beings from hundreds of species filled the chamber, each one possessing abilities and experiences far beyond anything humans could imagine. Yet even with their collective wisdom, the Council members struggled to understand what was happening on Earth. They were faced with a simple truth. Their assumptions had been wrong, profoundly wrong. A species they had considered minor, even controllable, had outsmarted them at every turn. Panic began to ripple through the Council. Some members argued for immediate escalation, a full-scale intervention to assert control before humanity could grow even stronger. Others advised caution, warning that further action could provoke unpredictable responses. The Council had studied countless civilizations, but humans were unlike any other. Their unpredictability, adaptability, and unity made them difficult to anticipate. No simulations, no reports, no calculations could accurately predict what Earth might do next. As the council debated, humanity continued its work quietly. Scientists monitored the skies for any new signals. Engineers fortified critical systems, and communities shared knowledge, ensuring that everyone played a part in the planet's resilience. Humanity's response was calm but decisive. They were not acting out of fear, anger, or ambition. They were acting out of necessity and intelligence. Every individual, whether aware of the council or not, contributed to the collective strength of their species. The council attempted smaller, more targeted disruptions, hoping to test humanity's response without provoking escalation. Satellites were disabled briefly, communication signals were interrupted, and power systems experienced minor anomalies. The council expected confusion, errors, and panic. Instead, humans adapted instantly. Redundant systems compensated for the interference. Engineers rerouted data, and ordinary citizens reported anomalies that helped refine global understanding. Every action the council took became an opportunity for humans to improve, to learn, and to prepare for the future. It was during this period that the council began to understand something essential about humanity. Unlike most species they had encountered, humans did not rely solely on hierarchy or authority. Knowledge, creativity, and initiative were distributed widely. Even ordinary individuals, students, hobbyists, volunteers could contribute meaningfully to global problem solving. This decentralized intelligence made humans remarkably difficult to predict and control. Attempts to intimidate or neutralize them only strengthened their cohesion and resilience. The council's frustration grew. Analysts reported that humans were learning faster than the council could act. Every disruption, every interference, every threat was transformed by humanity into an opportunity for growth. The council had underestimated the species' capacity for adaptation, ingenuity, and collaboration. A species that should have been compliant, or at least intimidated, had instead become unpredictable, resourceful, and remarkably capable. In the council chambers, debate became heated. Some members argued that humanity could not be allowed to continue unchecked. They suggested aggressive action, perhaps even preemptive strikes, to prevent further growth. Others warned that such actions could provoke a response that the council could not control. Humanity had shown an ability to adapt in ways that defied expectation. Escalation could lead to outcomes no one could predict. Meanwhile, humanity continued to demonstrate its uniqueness. Scientists developed systems that anticipated interference. Engineers strengthened infrastructure to resist disruptions, and communities around the world collaborated in ways that no external force could easily influence. Humans were not responding with fear or aggression. They were responding with intelligence, adaptability, and coordination. The council had never seen anything like it. Ordinary people played a crucial role. Citizens monitored signals, shared observations, and offered solutions. Communities supported one another, ensuring that critical functions continued even when systems were disrupted. Humanity's response was not the work of a few experts or governments. It was the collective effort of millions, each contributing in ways that strengthened the planet's resilience. This distributed intelligence and cooperation was unlike anything the council had ever encountered. The council began to realize the full implications of their failure. Humanity was not just surviving, they were thriving. Every action intended to intimidate, disrupt, or neutralize had only reinforced the species' resilience, cohesion, and ingenuity. Humans were unpredictable, adaptive, and extraordinarily clever. They could not be controlled with threats, interference, or intimidation. The very qualities that the council had underestimated, creativity, adaptability, unity, had become humanity's greatest strengths. As panic spread within the council, some members attempted to analyze humanity more deeply. Reports highlighted that humans were able to combine intelligence with creativity, in ways that allowed them to improvise solutions quickly. They communicated, collaborated, and learned from each attempt to disrupt them. The Council had never observed a species that could so quickly turn a threat into an advantage. Even the Council's most advanced predictive models failed. No algorithms, simulations, or calculations could fully account for humanity's distributed intelligence, adaptability, or the unpredictable nature of human creativity. Attempts to forecast the responses were continually proven wrong. Humanity's actions were both methodical and unpredictable, a combination that made them nearly impossible to control or anticipate. Despite the Council's growing panic, humanity remained calm. Scientists and engineers continued their work, improving communication networks, fortifying energy systems, and monitoring the skies. Communities continued to cooperate, sharing knowledge and supporting one another. Humans were not reacting with fear or aggression. They were responding with intelligence, preparation, and resilience. The Council attempted to communicate again, sending messages that were more direct, more urgent, and more forceful. They demanded compliance and warned of consequences. Humanity's response was measured but firm. They demonstrated awareness, capability, and preparation without threat or aggression. They communicated their ability to detect interference, adapt to challenges, and respond intelligently. Humans were not submitting. They were showing that they could survive and thrive despite the Council's attempts to control them. The Council was left speechless. They had never encountered a species that could respond so effectively to direct attempts at neutralization. Humanity's combination of intelligence, creativity, adaptability, and cooperation defied every expectation. They had turned a warning into a preparation, an attack into a lesson, and intimidation into resilience. The Council's confidence had been shattered in the end. The Council realized that further attempts to control humanity could be dangerous. This was not a species that could be managed through fear, interference, or authority. Humans had shown that they could adapt, respond, and thrive in the face of threats that far exceeded anything their planet had previously known. Their unpredictability, intelligence, and unity had created a situation that the Council could not easily resolve. Humanity had changed the dynamic entirely. What had begun as a simple warning and minor interference had revealed the remarkable nature of the species. The Council could no longer act with certainty, nor could they predict the outcome of further actions. Humans had demonstrated that they were resilient, intelligent, and capable of responding to challenges in ways that could not be anticipated. The story of Earth's resilience and intelligence had reached a turning point. The Council, for the first time in its history, faced a species that could not be controlled through conventional means. Humanity's calm, intelligent, and adaptive response had transformed the situation completely. The species they had underestimated was now a force that demanded respect, caution, and perhaps even admiration. And so, humanity continued its work quietly, calmly, and intelligently. They had survived every attempt at interference, adapted to every challenge, and demonstrated qualities that left the galaxy's most powerful beings in shock. The Council's panic only confirmed what humans had already proven. They were capable, resilient, and utterly unpredictable. Earth had survived, adapted, and grown stronger. Humanity had turned threats into opportunities and demonstrated a courage and intelligence that the Council had never anticipated. The galaxy had been forced to reconsider its assumptions, and the story of... By now, the Galactic Consual Senate had reached a point of quiet desperation. Every expectation they had about humanity had been proven wrong. A species they had assumed would be easy to intimidate, easy to control, had instead shown intelligence, resilience, and adaptability that few in the galaxy could comprehend. The Council had tried warnings, minor disruptions, and even precise strikes, all designed to assert authority and demand compliance. Each attempt had failed, and every failure had only strengthened humanity's confidence and abilities. For humans, life had returned to a rhythm of daily work, school, and routine. But beneath that normalcy, a quiet revolution was happening. Scientists continued to monitor signals from the stars. Engineers strengthened infrastructure, and ordinary citizens contributed in small but meaningful ways. Humanity had learned how to cooperate on a global scale, share knowledge efficiently, and adapt to challenges that would have seemed impossible only a few years earlier. Every individual, whether aware of the Council or not, played a role in ensuring the planet's resilience. The Council, watching from across the galaxy, could no longer approach humanity as a problem to be solved with brute force or intimidation. They had underestimated humans at every turn. Each new challenge had been met with curiosity, intelligence, and unity. The species had proven that fear would not work, threats would not work, and direct interference only encouraged adaptation. Humanity had become, in every sense, a puzzle the Council could not solve. In an unprecedented decision, the Council called an emergency meeting unlike any in their long history. Representatives from hundreds of species gathered, their faces and forms reflecting shock, confusion, and even a grudging respect. The analysts presented a detailed report on humanity's response to every challenge the Council had posed. Every strategy, every disruption, every interference had been documented and analyzed, and the conclusion was unmistakable. Humans were extraordinary. They were unpredictable, adaptable, and remarkably intelligent. The Council realized that further attempts at control could provoke consequences they could not manage. Humans were capable of rapid adaptation, problem-solving, and coordination on a scale that no single member of the Council had anticipated. What had started as an effort to neutralize a potentially dangerous species had revealed a species that demanded respect and understanding rather than fear or domination. On Earth, humans continued to prepare in quiet ways. While the average person went about daily life, researchers and engineers had refined systems to monitor, defend, and communicate across the planet. These systems were no longer merely reactive. They had become proactive. Humans had learned not only to survive interference, but to anticipate and respond in ways that strengthened their society. Their response was not driven by fear, aggression, or ambition. It was driven by intelligence, cooperation, and determination to protect their world. Then came the moment of communication. Humanity, through careful study of the Council's signals, crafted a message not of submission, not of threat, but of understanding and confidence. They demonstrated that they had observed the Council, understood their actions, and were capable of defending themselves intelligently. The message highlighted human ingenuity, resourcefulness, and unity, and it conveyed a simple truth. Humanity would not be intimidated, but neither would it provoke unnecessary conflict. When the Council received the message, there was silence. The calm intelligence of the response, combined with the clear evidence of preparation and resilience, stunned even the most experienced members. The species they had tried to control had instead demonstrated qualities that demanded respect: intelligence, courage, and the ability to adapt under pressure. For the first time, the Council had to reconsider everything they thought they knew about humans. Discussions in the Council shifted. No longer was humanity seen as a potential problem to be neutralized. Instead, they were recognized as a remarkable species, capable of growth, learning, and cooperation beyond expectations. Some members argued for continued observation, suggesting that humans could become valuable allies if approached carefully. Others insisted on caution, recognizing that unpredictability remained a defining trait of the species. The Council understood that Earth's actions had forever changed the perception of humanity in the galaxy. Humans, for their part, continued their preparations quietly. They strengthened communication networks, improved energy grids, and refined monitoring systems. But these actions were no longer solely defensive. They were also a statement. Humanity was capable, intelligent, and aware of its place in a larger universe. People worked not for fear, not for conquest, but for understanding, collaboration, and resilience. Every individual, from the youngest student to the most experienced engineer, contributed to the collective strength of the planet. The Council, after extensive deliberation, finally made a decision. They would cease efforts to neutralize Earth and instead establish a cautious form of communication and cooperation. Humans would be treated not as a threat, but as a species to observe with respect, to engage with carefully, and to learn from. The Council recognized that intelligence, adaptability, and unity had allowed humanity to survive challenges far greater than most species would endure, and that these same qualities made them a force that could not be controlled through fear. The first official message from the Council to Earth reflected this new approach. It was cautious, formal, and respectful. It acknowledged humanity's capabilities, intelligence, and resilience. It expressed the Council's intention to engage in dialogue rather than interference, and it invited humans to participate in a broader conversation about the galaxy and its possibilities. For humanity, this was an unprecedented opportunity. They had survived, adapted, and earned the attention of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, not through weapons, aggression, or conquest, but through intelligence, cooperation, and perseverance. Humans responded in kind. Their message was equally calm, thoughtful, and respectful. They acknowledged the Council's presence and intentions while affirming their own independence and preparedness. The tone was clear. Humans were willing to engage, to learn, and to collaborate, but they would not be intimidated or controlled. The dialogue that began at that moment marked a new era for Earth, a shift from isolation and observation to recognition and participation in a larger galactic community. For ordinary humans, life continued much as it always had. Schools, workplaces, and communities remained busy with daily routines. But beneath the surface, something profound had changed. Humanity had learned that intelligence, collaboration, and resilience were more powerful than fear, coercion, or intimidation. They had faced a challenge that no species expected them to survive, and they had not only survived, but emerged stronger, wiser, and more united. Across the galaxy, the Council shared reports and reflections. Humanity had demonstrated that a species confined to a single planet could be unpredictable, resourceful, and extraordinarily clever. What had begun as an attempt to neutralize a threat had become a lesson in humility, respect, and the extraordinary potential of life on Earth. The Council recognized that humans had qualities that were rare, remarkable, and impossible to ignore. The story of Earth's response spread quietly but surely. Scientists and engineers continued to advance technology. Communities continued to collaborate, and humanity as a species became more aware of its place in the cosmos. Humans had proven that intelligence, unity, and perseverance could overcome fear, intimidation, and challenges far beyond their world. The planet had been tested, and the species had passed with distinction. In the end, Earth had achieved something extraordinary. Humanity had survived a threat that no other species had faced in recorded history. They had adapted, innovated, and responded with intelligence and unity. The Council, once confident of control, was now in awe of a species they had underestimated. Humanity had earned its place in the galaxy, not through aggression or conquest, but through resilience, cleverness, and the remarkable ability to act together in the face of unprecedented challenges. And so, Earth returned to a new normal. Humans continued their lives, but with a new awareness of their capabilities and the vast universe beyond their skies. They had proven that even when faced with the galaxy's most powerful entities, intelligence, cooperation, and determination could create outcomes far beyond what anyone had imagined. Humanity's story was no longer just about survival. It was about the courage, creativity, and unity that defined them as a species. The Council, meanwhile, continued to watch, but with respect. They understood that humanity was not a threat to be neutralized, but a species to learn from, observe, and perhaps one day engage with as equals. What began as an attempt to control had instead revealed the extraordinary potential of life on Earth. Humanity had responded calmly, intelligently, and courageously, leaving the galaxy forever changed. And thus, the tale of Earth and the Galactic Consual Senate came to a turning point. Humanity had endured, adapted, and proven that even the most advanced powers could be met with resilience, intelligence, and unity. The story of survival had become a story of respect, understanding, and the remarkable potential of a species that refused to be silenced or underestimated. Earth had spoken, and the galaxy had listened.